for the long times, 32 years actually, police in my country in Indonesia is same with the military forces actually. So we could not differentiate whether this is police, whether this is armed forces actually, because in terms of organization, even the chief police was under the armed forces commander. Yeah, but after we changed into the democratic country, yeah, in 1998, in which no military style rules, and then we becomes more civilized country actually, then everything is changed. Yeah. So first in the state priorities, we have changed the law on the police, yeah, in which we separated the police from the armed forces. So the police is directly under the president, not under the armed forces commander. Even the situation has been criticized by many civil society organizations, and now there was a movement and has been listed in the legislation programs to reform the police law. Yeah, one of the demands in the reform is to put the police not under the direct command of the president, but under the like in many modern countries, under the Ministry of Home Affairs or other ministry. But this is still hot debates in my country, whether to change the position of the police under the president or not under a certain ministry. But the reforms to be on the police law actually is only part of our plan to reform our integrated criminal justice system. Yeah, this year we start with the debate on the bill of criminal codes, penal code. Yeah, because we follow the continental Europe civil law system, in which we have codifications. Yeah. When one of our codifications is on penal code, actually now we start to reform our criminal code, which has been applied for more than 150 years by the Dutch colonial rulers. And even though we have been independent for 70 years by this year, but we have not changed our criminal code. Now we are changing our criminal code, in which one of the important new provision to be inserted is actually articles on the tortures by the police and by other law enforcers. There are two articles in our bills which clearly will punish the police and legal enforcer when they make any torture in exercising their duties as a legal enforcer. And if we can complete our criminal codes by the middle of the next years, our plan is then to move to the to reform our criminal procedural code. Yeah, that will also put some new provision to ensure that torture can be avoided. For example, we will put provision which oblige the police, yeah, to find a lawyer when the police actually investigate what we call questions the suspect, yeah, for any crimes with the threat of 3 years and more in prison. Yeah, that is what we will put. And if this is violated, then all process done by the police will be null and void. That is what we plan to put. And another thing is I share that after the criminal code, criminal procedural code, then we will move to reform the law on police, yeah, to make sure that the police forces will more civilized in exercising their duties. But of course, this will be hot debates in our country when we reform the police. Yeah. Another thing is actually not only to bring the police under the certain ministry, but also to reduce the power of the police. Yeah. For example, by now actually the police functions not only criminal investigation, but also to deal with security, the security matters, yeah, and also even to deal with administrative matters like issuing driving license and then registration of cars and so on and so on. That is what we propose that we plan to remove the power of the police to deal with administrative matters like issuing driving license and so on. And also we will move some power of the police maybe to a separate body in dealing with certain crime like narcotic. Yeah, that is I think what I can highlight at the moment. Thank you.
Of course, separation of the police from the army is a very vital step, yeah. And separation by way of operation of statute, yeah, is perhaps the first step, which I guess will lead into the separation of the army and the police and redefining the role of civilian police, yeah, as a cultural change as well. Into and getting that set in motion. Perhaps Indonesia, along with Philippines, if I'm not wrong, and definitely Thailand and Burma are countries where civilian police officers still use military designations: police general, police colonel, police major, like that. So this is one of the remains of the old military system. And of course, the other aspects that you mentioned regarding the change in the criminal law, the penal law, the procedural law, and also the law regarding policing, which are all important steps. But when it comes to the question of torture, this is perhaps a discussion that we should have. When it comes to the question of torture, there is a strong lobby group which believes that torture should be dealt separately outside the remit of the penal code, constituting it as a separate category of offense, which also calls for a separate investigative agency to investigate cases against the investigating agency, which is cases of torture. And when you this is for the larger discussion after the panel. And when you mentioned about reducing the power of police, I would also want to ask you this question. Perhaps you can explain once the panel has completed their presentations, which is regarding the pre-trial detention time that you have. And we were told that in Indonesia, if you have crimes, once again, punishable with imprisonment about 7 years and more, you could actually have the person in detention without even having the right to see a lawyer or the judge for 90 days. So are there discussions in the civil society, in the government, to change these also as part of a policy reformation in Indonesia?
Thank you. Well, things haven't changed much since last year when I was here and when I spoke. So there could be a lot of repetition of what I'm going to say today, what I have said last year. And I have my colleague also, Dr. Zafullah Chaudhry from Bangladesh came, very, very respectable civil society leader and human rights activist, and respected across all political party line. And because he's here, and I would request also him to add a few words in more details about the challenge that we face today. I would like to say that in Bangladesh, in South Asia, unlike in India and Pakistan, I'm sure there are a lot of things in common. I don't have the right information about the population demography in Pakistan and India, but in Bangladesh, it's a little unique, I would say. We have, in the last election that took place in 5th of January in 2014, the election where most of the major political party boycotted and only one party actually took part, the party in power today. In that election, 28%, I believe, 29% of the total number of electorates were the first-time voters in Bangladesh, meaning they were below the age of 22, 29%. Almost 65% of the total population in Bangladesh are below the age of 35. Almost 80% of the total population below the age of 40. So if you look at that demography, that says that it is the young people, young means very young, even I am 45 running right now, and I don't belong to that 80% of the population. So that 80% of the population, those who are below the age of 40, actually do not have any influence over the policy making of the country. This 80% of the people of the country, those who are below the age of 40, those who are actually born after the independence of Bangladesh, called the Generation Bangladesh, because when it comes to my father or my seniors, they had been sometimes, even Dr. Zafullah Chaudhry, if I say, sometimes they were British Indians, sometimes they were East Pakistanis, but this is the generation. For them, Bangladesh has been the only identity, and they're 80% of the people. Like me, for me, Bangladesh is and has been the only identity. But our generation do not have any influence over the policy making, one, and do not actually has any opportunity to take part in the nation building process. So it is very right when we have discussed today that in Southeast Asia or South Asia, change is taking place. But this change in the mindset is actually taking place at the social level. But when it comes to, but that change in the mindset actually do not have the proper reflection at the political level. So when it comes to the policy making, when it comes to running the country, when it comes to reforms and stuff, there is a big difference there. And that has created a problem. So change in the political leadership needs to take place in South Asia. What I see that we have developed a culture over the years that in every profession, at some point of life, at some point of time, you retire, except in politics. You die, you don't retire in politics. And that has created another problem, when you talk about the cultural problem in Bangladesh, and I'm sure in Pakistan and India as well. It is the same political leadership from the same family since the independence of Bangladesh, I'm sure, the same thing in Pakistan and same thing in India. And for that, I see a difference in the population where you have more younger people who sees television channels, you're part of the globalization, has an expectation of reform and wants to see change taking place in one way. But when it comes to the political level, in the parliament and the executive level, I see there is a tremendous difference between the general mass and the political leadership in terms of expectations. The internal democracy is another problem that within these political parties and in most cases. Now let's come back to the point. When it comes to the torture, I would like to see torture in two different ways. Torture at the social level, when you have a country where a lot of people still lives under the poverty line, and the poverty is a big issue. And the police reforms did not take place the way it should have. Torture at the social level is mostly an extortion, it's a financial thing. And the poor suffers the most when it comes to extortion, especially when it takes place directly by the police, state supported or state by the police. And there's also, the upper class has also been suffering from extortion. When there is a joint venture between the police and the underworld, then of course the business class also face the same problem of extortion. But the more serious kind of torture that is taking place in Bangladesh, especially for the last 5 years, is the political torture. Where police had been used, the law enforcement agencies are used as a tool for the political party to remain in power. So the torture that is taking place, especially the disappearances cases, which I've mentioned even last time, I remember, just a year ago, in this same consultation meeting, where the number of disappearances in Bangladesh among the opposition political parties were less than 300. In the last 1 year, there have been another 500 plus. We've already almost touched 1,000 cases of disappearances among the students and the youth activists of the opposition parties, only in the last 1 year. And of course, the other tortures are also there. So that is another thing. That's absolutely a political thing when you come to a more serious type of tortures that we are talking about. We have discussed this last time, I remember. After that, when I went back to Bangladesh, I tried to understand more about how the criminal justice system works there. One of the three major components in the criminal justice system, what we have discussed, and Biju also just mentioned a little while ago, about the prosecution. So you have the Department of Judiciary and the Department of Law Enforcement Agencies and the Department of Prosecution. This is something in Bangladesh is severely lacking. We do not have an independent Department of Prosecution. Prosecutors are appointed directly by the party in power, and the most incompetent people are actually appointed as prosecutors. And their only job, they work hand in hand with the police, just as a rubber stamp. Because this is a system that we have inherited from the colonial time. So we do have Department of Prosecution, Department of Judiciary, and that. But this is something that we need to work out more. The biggest challenge that Bangladesh faces today is the independence of judiciary. The judges are appointed by the political leaders, and they are directly under the Ministry of Law. And we had an amendment where we have talked about the independence and autonomy of the judiciary, which actually never took place. And another thing that Bangladesh had a very unique system called the caretaker government. During the election, the party in power would resign and a caretaker government to be formed. And the chief of the caretaker government is supposed to be the immediate retired Chief Justice. That was the system which had been changed very recently. And this system was introduced back in 1994. And it worked pretty well. But one problem with that system was you are handing over political responsibilities to the judges. for a very certain time, for just 3 months before the election. But because of that, the politicians actually took it very seriously, and an amendment came in 2005 where they changed the retirement age of the judges to make sure a certain individual becomes the chief of the caretaker government in the next election. So after that, a lot of political tussle was there, and eventually in 2010, the amendment was introduced. By 2011, they changed the constitution, and caretaker government was removed from the constitution, and now we've gone back that the political party will remain in power and they will hold the elections. And that actually did not improve the system. Actually, took us more backward, and now we don't have democracy. So the solution to it, number one, what I feel is the restoration of democracy is very, very important in case of Bangladesh. To talk about anything else, unless and until the democracy is reestablished, we cannot bring any other changes here. Independence of judiciary, functional autonomy of the police department is very, very important. I was talking to Rajesh even during the lunch break, and I think we need to draw a line that where the jurisdiction of the police department, also the jurisdiction of the civil authority, and we must draw a proper line that when we can say that the civilians cannot overstep or overpower the police department. The capacity building of the police department is also very important. Dr. Zafrullah Chaudhry was just talking to Mr. Rajesh a little while ago in Kerala. In that state, I think the 32 million population with 482 police stations, where in Bangladesh, so it's about 66,000 average population for per police station. In Bangladesh, I think it is just 5 times more. In each police station, the population is more than 200,000 or plus maybe. So that's another thing. So the capacity building, more police stations, more police officers, education, and all these things are also very important. And also the depoliticization of the judiciary is also important, the police department and the prosecution department. In detail about the fair trial issues, and in few points, I would request Mrs. Zafrullah Chaudhry to talk about the judiciary, especially when it comes to the fair trial issues, because Dr. Chaudhry has been working in this sector for a long time, and he has personal experience, especially in the last few months. We have seen him taking real strong stand about this. So please, Dr. Chaudhry, if you would like to add some few points on this.
For all practical purpose, Bangladesh judiciary is totally free, independent. Only thing, before giving a judgment, they just get a telephone call from the Prime Minister or some level minister. Accordingly, judges prepare the report. This is the standard talk of the town. In Bangladesh, the worst thing happening, even it is much worse than the colonial past. Recently, as Mahi has eloquently mentioned, how the police has become a direct instrument of the government, and they were prosecutor, government, and the police together in collusion. They harass the people. Already 17,000 opposition political workers are in jail. They are not getting their bail. Very important young leaders and others have got nothing against them. Their country knows them, like Mahmudur Rahman Manna, an editor, name also Mahmudur Rahman. He wrote nothing. He made a criticism of the judiciary. Only thing Mr. Mahmudur Rahman has said, the judiciary is behaving such arrogantly, such any government, if any judgment goes against the government, Attorney General goes to the chamber judge, and chamber judge immediately put the stamp stay. So you cannot get any relief. This is the only thing, and it was, he gave proper accounts. Almost 99% any judgment against the government were been stopped by chamber judge. This is a statement of fact. And there was immediately court case, contempt, and this gentleman is in jail over 2 years. His case never been heard. The judges, they feel embarrassed to listen to his case. Mahmood Rahman Manna is another young leader. Manna, he is older than you. Manna, he is a very uprising political leader. They had a telephone talk conversation. We have got a new law of operation. It's called, it is the telephone conversation taping. This is, and secondly, anything said in the telephone or anything, communication, you cannot make any criticism of Prime Minister and her family. A young lecturer of the university, Jahangirnagar University, he wrote in his Facebook that when country will get rid of the Prime Minister. This is the only thing he wrote.
I wish she was dead.
I wish he's not there.
I wish she was dead.
I wish he's not there. 7 years jail. Another, a village boy, he said, "Kokhon jabe," when she will go. Simply he said in his, when she will go. 3 years jail, 7 years. And like these sorts of things, it has become, it is unprecedented. It is unprecedented. As I was mentioning before, the 17,000 political workers in jail, all have got the similar case. Everybody, they have been involved in burning buses, petrol bombs, etc. At least some cases are 100 kilometers away from his home. But case never been comes up, so they cannot move for the bail. They cannot go anything more than 6 months to 8 months. They are in jail without the case being heard. Somebody lucky, like a senior political leaders, like the Secretary General of the opposition BNP, after 6 months his case was heard at the High Court. High Court allowed him 6 weeks bail. Immediately government again come to the chamber judge. Then again, when they have lost the case in the Supreme Court, they made a review petition. These are not even in the British time. Yes. You see, even in Pakistan time, we had a Security Act. In the security, if anybody detained for security reasons, within 1 month, government have to bring the case to place before the board to justify the detention. But with these cases, there is no such clause even. So you may be detained for a year. And mostly the police is making the huge business. In the morning, I was listening to how the Kerala police is working and how our police is working. So like this has to be. And lastly, I want to add a word about the torture. Bangladesh had reached the Guantanamo stage. Really, this is the worst possible torture, and like a Latin American level, hundreds of people will vanished, nothing very found, or even their information comes after 9 months or 10 months. And one case is very interesting. In this torture, unfortunately, India is actively involved. I'm sorry to mention that India is very present, government is actively involved with their law. What they do, they are sitting in our Prime Minister's office and they also help. There's nothing wrong in there, like a technical collaboration. But what happened? One of the really senior leader of the BNP, all on a sudden was found missing. He went and cried. After a month, it was discovered he's in Assam, in Indian territory. How did he go without visa, he's in still in. So like this collaboration of India-Bangladesh collaboration of torture, so they are trying to contain their uprising in northeastern India. So this torture and they're and it's a very common story. Missing the story is he was caught. Person was brought to the police station. He was handcuffed. Even then he was running away. So that's why he died in crossfire. So we are very sad. Lastly, really, a judiciary has become a party to these sorts of game corruptions. In our court, 3 million cases are pending. So you can easily imagine how the really fate of the people. There is no chance of getting any redress anywhere.
There is a party, the Jamaat-e-Islam Bangladesh, which has been considered as a party which took part in the 1971 war, took a stand against the War of Independence. So there's a lot of political questions about them, that whether they should have the right to do politics in an independent Bangladesh or not. But that beside the point. But the student organization of Jamaat-e-Islam, student Shibir, it's called the Shibir, and the president of Chhatro Shibir had been in police remand in a row, at a stretch for 118 days. I mean, and he's still in the police remand. And a lot of human rights organizations have been talking about it, but just because he is part of Jamaat-e-Islam, so has been branded as a terrorist organization. Nothing, but there's no specific allegation was still brought against him. But he's still today, he's in police custody. He was in the police remand for 118 days, and then he was straight sent to a hospital where doctors have said this boy probably could never walk again stand on his own feet. There's a new mechanism that we see in the Bangladesh in the last 1 year, I would say, if Dr. Chaudhary agrees with me, that when the police files, when there is a case, a fictitious case is filed against an opposition leader on terrorism or throwing petrol bombs in a car, in a bus or something, they don't mention the names of, maybe like they put 5 names, that these are the cases against these 5 people, plus 1,000 anonymous people, so there's no names. So that gives the right to the police to catch anybody under that 1,000 anonymous and take them in the police custody. And in that way, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people have already been in the police custody.
This is known as blind death. The police terminology is known as blind death.
Okay, yeah, but they say, but I've seen this. They say in Bengali they say Omkatunama, meaning anonymous. 200, 500, sometimes they say 1,000 anonymous people.
Identifiable people.
But identifiable. Right. So I think that's why what I was talking in the case of Bangladesh. I think number 1 right now our focus is the restoration of democracy. Without that, I don't think it is possible to actually bring about change in the criminal justice system or improve the other things that we have been discussing here today. So number 1 target would be the restoration of democracy. That makes sure that the accountability has to be there. And of course, then the transparency issue will come back. And when Basil was talking in the morning, and the change in Hong Kong, last year when we were here, we had the opportunity to discuss it with ICAC. No, we couldn't talk to the ICAC. We couldn't, but we wanted to, because I think in 1974, the formation, the establishment of ICAC in Hong Kong, that actually started a sustainable change in Hong Kong. That triggered the entire change process. And it would be important for all of us here to, if we could meet any person from ICAC, to hear the experience of Hong Kong, that how actually the sustainable change triggered and took place. Thank you very much.
Dr. Chaudhary, along with Basil, are 2 laureates of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation, award. It is also known as the Alternate Nobel Prize, and it is widely regarded as a covetous prize across Europe and in the developed countries. And thanks to your very bold position, while a lot of people compromised, it was ultimately, at the end of the day, your strong position that I will not compromise, that helped in us also taking up your case and cause, and eventually finding an end to that. It is a good discussion that you both have initiated regarding Bangladesh, and we know and we agree that among the rest of South Asian countries where positive changes are taking place, Bangladesh is walking at a fast pace, I'm afraid, backwards. There is a little improprietariness in comparison, but I still would want to make this point, and this applies not only to Bangladesh but also to other countries in the region, say for example Thailand in Asia, where my understanding is that the stronger the rule of law regime sets its foot and gets rooted in a country, the difficult it becomes, irrespective of which kind of force, uniformed or otherwise, one major political party, which is what you have in Bangladesh, as opposed to the military in Thailand. It becomes difficult for them to usurp and take over the democratic space. In Thailand it was possible because the rule of law had not set in at that level, and it was very easy, and in fact the Supreme Court of Thailand was 50% responsible for the elected government to be thrown out. The government might be bad, but it was still a contributory factor for the democratic government to be thrown out. I think that the same case applies to a certain degree or to a large degree in Bangladesh also. The comparison which I wanted to make is that concerning India, where we have the problems you heard already, many of the we do have issues concerning judiciary and so on. As an Indian, and I guess my colleagues from India would agree to this, that I still don't foresee a future in India where the military or a particular political party in power can actually, completely take away the judicial independence. We have problems in the judiciary. I 100% agree. There are so many problems that we have to, overcome. But I don't think that the Supreme Court or way down, the High Court, or even further down, I don't think that you can actually, as a police officer or as a military officer, you can go into the lowest of the jurisdiction, a magistrate's court, and conduct in a way that the judge will not appreciate it and get away scot-free. I have personally witnessed incidents where cops or state agencies behaving in not acceptable ways in the magistrates' courts, but then the magistrates taking firm steps and then reprimanding the officer, and on one occasion just asking him to be arrested by another police officer, very subordinate. He was a circle inspector. The guy who arrested the circle inspector was a constable, and it's the court's order. So we do have that much extent of trust, and that is because that environment was created. Unfortunately, the darkest hours of India's independent history, during the emergency, where the court itself had set its foot strong and had set that position hard and fast. It is etched in stone. It will be very difficult to reverse that. So again, I don't want to compare because it is unfair also. But I just want to make this point clear that the more the space available for the rule of law to root, it is more difficult for democracies, or however bad our democratic framework is, still to be completely locked up in deep freezers. So there is a direct link. If I may ask Belram to...
Fundamental thing Bangladesh needs to do is to bring back its democracy. Fortunately for India, we are still the largest democracy in the world, maybe one of the most vibrant democracies, where we have a multi-party system, a very strong opposition. We have ensured parliamentary accountability of the ruling governments. We have free media and very unrestricted social media nowadays. So this is a good picture that I can present before you about my own country. But there are concerns, genuine concerns that I must admit. With regard to Bangladesh, you are saying that you are moving faster backwards. With regard to my country also, I would say that things are not going in the positive direction. It's not a race backwards, but even then, it's not an encouraging situation after the present government coming into power middle of last year. Extreme right-wing BJP-led coalition government is in power for the last 1.5 years. The Congress party, which was in power for the last 10 years before that, is reduced to a mere 44 out of the 540 seats in the Indian Parliament. But still, with regard to things when it comes to the Parliament, the opposition parties or the different parties in the opposition, when they join hands to fight something, they could successfully achieve that. The latest example being the Land Acquisition Amendment Ordinance, which the present government was having a very high regard, or that was a prestige issue for them. But the opposition could successfully stall it, and because it was anti-farmer, pro-capitalist, there were a lot of issues with regard to that. So what I mean to say is that even when some party gets absolute majority or a very high majority in the parliament, India can't be ruled as per their whims and fancies apart from a certain level. So I am joining my hands with, I agree to what Bijoy has said. The Indian judiciary also cannot be completely controlled by any person or any government or any party, however powerful they are within the parliament. So that sort of judicial independence that we are fortunate to maintain so far, that is our greatest blessings, I would say. We have a lot of issues with regard to judiciary. The most important concern is the pendency of a lot of cases, not only with regard to criminal cases, but with regard to civil cases also. The average duration for a civil dispute to finally come to a logical conclusion is more than 20-25 years. So this is starting from the lower courts up to the Supreme Court. If one want to fight for it, it may take more than 2 decades. So this much number of cases are being pending in different courts in India. So the major concern is the infrastructural or the resources problem. We have a lot of other systemic issues also, but the resource crunch is very much crucial when it comes to expediting things like this. Again, the cost of justice is also very high when it comes to the apex courts and all. An ordinary man, a common man, I would say, I don't know how much he will be able to pursue justice up to the Supreme Court, where it takes a huge amount of money. So these are the important areas with regard to the judicial independence or the judicial efficiency in general. But in contrast to what my friend from Indonesia was saying, we have a very independent or totally unrelated police and military, and both are being under the civilian control, very strong civilian control. No Indian Prime Minister should have a nightmare that somebody from the military would overthrow him. Unlike in Pakistan or some other countries, nowhere in the history of independent India we could there was no major challenge for the civilian authority from military people. The civilian control is well established. Police and military have totally different structures, and under the civilian control also, police is under the Home Department, and for the military we have the Defense Ministry separately. The police is basically a state subject, though we have central police forces also, mainly the reserve police and all. Investigation also, we have separate agencies at the provincial level, state level, and at the national level. Of late, with regard to the terrorism and such related crimes, there are some new legislations, and with regard to a human rights perspective, we would also say that such legislations are somewhat not in line with the modern concepts of human rights that we would like to ensure in a democracy like that of India. So these legislations have been violated in many cases. There are a lot of such complaints, especially when it comes to minorities or Dalits or other backward classes. There are a lot of complaints that there are systemic prejudices, biases against them. If we look at the number of under trial people who are charged with terrorist related cases, so there are a disproportionate number of people coming from Muslims and Dalits in that category. So this is a fundamental issue that we need to address. During the last 1.5 years, we have seen the rising or uprising of many of the hardcore hardliners, the Hindutva fanatics, I have to say so. And these people are trying to literally destroy the basic ethos and the basic values of our liberal democracy. So this we can't afford to go any further. So such are the challenges that we face, but in general I am very optimistic that India has an innate power which does not allow anyone to over dominate, because of this the main reason for that, I would say, is India is so diverse, so vast and so diverse that no one or no particular ideology or no particular party could dominate the whole of India for more than any point of time. So this is one fundamental blessing that India have. India is so diverse. Even the American President Barack Obama, when he visited our country last year, he reminded us of celebrating these diversities. But unfortunately, I have to say that the present rulers of India does not understand this logic. So that is a darker picture, but still we have very hope. We have every hope that we will be able to come up. And as mentioned earlier, I come from Kerala, the southernmost state of India, where things are pretty much better when compared.
Now, in addition to what I said regarding judicial independence, I think one of the blessings that we have for so many reasons is the oversight of a civilian government in the parliament for all acts said and done by any other organ of the state, which includes the military as well. So there can't be a budget which is hidden under the carpet, which the military is allowed to be spent there can't be an enterprise into which the military can engage on and find its own source of income, which is very unique for the Asian context, because it is only in India that there is a full parliamentary oversight that exists today when it comes to military authority and military engagements. We have persons of very, very condemnable and questionable character in the parliament. I was reading a report by the Election Watch from yesterday regarding elections in Bihar, where 150 out of 270 constituents, candidates for the election have been accused of very serious offences. I mean, not just organizing a protest or destroying public property in the protest and so on, but very serious offences like murder and so on. So, despite this setup where election process, where people who get elected have questionable records, but then institutions also become examined by way of parliamentary oversights, and that includes, by the way, the judiciary also. Some of the cases where the judges were being publicly inquired also came from public institutions, which also the Controller and Auditor General's Department, which is also accountable to the Parliament. So the Auditor General had put questions regarding budgetary spending by the senior judges, I mean High Court and Supreme Court judges, and they had been made accountable for. The second aspect is regarding resources, which has been going rounds already across the table. I think we also need to spend some time to discuss about that. That is it really true to say that many of our countries lack resources? I don't believe as an Indian that India is a poor country. It is a very rich country. Unfortunately, there is still no policy framework, there is still no debate which places primacy on justice institutions when it comes to allocation of resources. It is a very, very rich country which spends perhaps the least among countries of that financial resources and capacities when it comes to justice institutions. So that is a second aspect. And I just want to conclude your intervention also by saying that, well, had we had a more vibrant, strong rule of law framework, I believe that we would not have seen Modi as a prime minister. So the fact that we have a person who has been accused of, let us say, maybe he might not have been physically involved in the act of crimes that is accused against him, but who has been at the helm of affairs in the state, where had we had the accountability structure to the extent to which we all want it to be, we would definitely not have seen a person like Modi in the PMO. So that also, the fact that he is there, who a lot of people agree that the policies could be threatening, is also speaks unfortunately to the fact that we had not had done enough of our homework when we had the opportunity for doing that kind of homework. So it is also a direct result of such kind of laxity in the past.
To put my views in this August gathering, first of all, I will shed light on the present situation of torture, ill treatment, and fair trial situation of Nepal. And then I shall shed light on what new constitution which has just come has make provisions for that and what we are doing. And then I will shed light on challenges and the ways to go ahead. My country, Nepal, was also very much infamous for torture and ill treatment in the custody until a decade ago. Because there was a civil war in Nepal, and at the time, military and police and Maoists all hijacked the people. Thousands of people disappeared at a time, and they have disappeared forever. They will never come. And torture was very much rampant at the time. But if we see the situation of Nepal after comprehensive peace agreement, things have changed a lot. Now, year-to-year basis, torture is being decreased at the ratio of 2.5% per year. In the city centers, which was very much famous for torture, now torture is very rare. And Hanuman Doka, as I had mentioned before, was very much famous for torture. Now there is, I think, they torture people at the separate place, but at Hanuman Doka, the police headquarters, torture is zero. That is one scenario, but that doesn't mean that torture is zero all over the Nepal. It persists there, but it is a decreasing level, decreasing trend. In the past 15 years, since 2001, Advocacy Forum Nepal, it is an kind of independent lawyers institution which conducts the data of torture every year. According to its data, in some districts torture is higher, but taken Nepal as a whole, torture is decreasing in a rapid manner. In comparison to 2013, in 2014, there is decrease of 0.5% only, but taken as a whole of 11 years, torture and ill treatment is decreasing in Nepal. It is in decreasing trend. Torture in theft cases is seen in many districts in Nepal. Tortures to the Dalits occur now and then. Torture in my country is class-based, as I had already mentioned. If the man is rich, no torture at all. If the man is poor, torture can be seen everywhere. If the man is Dalit or woman is Dalit, torture is sure to happen. If the man or woman is from Brahmin family, no possibility of torture. If the man is in relation to the higher leader, then his torture or her torture can be stopped at any moment when the leader telephones. So this is the scenario of Nepal. So torture is there, it is in decreasing trend, but torture is lessening. So I don't want to put rosy view only in the case of torture and ill treatment in Nepal. In Kathmandu, which is capital of Nepal, torture, the incidence of torture increased last year. In Japa also it increased, in Kailali also increased. This means that only city centers are tortureless. It is not so. So it based on classes, it is based on class, and it is based on the case also. So having told this, I want to go on the new constitution, what it has done in the name of the cultures. And first of all, going before that, I will say why the case of torture is lessening in Nepal. One reason is that after the restoration of democracy in Nepal, a civil authority has been stronger. It is stronger over the police force. Police force in Nepal is in total civilian control. Sometimes cases of army not obeying the government occurs in Nepal, but is still taken generally. Nepal army is also under the civilian control, and we have armed police also, which is totally under civilian control. And judiciary in Nepal is very strong and independent also. That is one reason. And next is independent abuse investigation authority in commission is there, which is very powerful, which can see the case of any abuse of authority of even the Prime Minister. Recently, a week ago, 2 ministers were sacked because this commission reported that they are involved in the corruption. So this kind of very strong mechanism is there in Nepal, and it can go against any abuse of authority to any person in authority. So because of this also, abuse of power is lessening in Nepal. And next is democratization of the police mechanism. Police itself has started democratization of the police and serve the people with a smile. This is the slogan of police mechanism now, and this has started because of the comprehensive peace agreement provisions. In that, there is a provision of reform in the administration and reform in the police is there, and due to that provision, reform of police has occurred in Nepal, and it is going in a rapid manner, though it is not satisfactory, but it is going on. And in the new constitution, there is very good provision for torture, provisions of the torture to any citizen. If any person is tortured in custody, he or she might be punished. That provision is there, and torture has been totally prohibited in the new constitution. And we have a new bill in the parliament against torture, which says that if any police official is found guilty of making torture, he or she will be punished heavily. He or she will be put in jail also. That provision is there. This bill has not been passed yet. There was a strong protest from the side of the police authority against this bill. They said that if this bill is passed, we cannot investigate at all. So because of the request of the police authority, this bill is pending now. But sooner or later, I think, this bill will be passed, because in the parliament, there is vast majority of the parliamentarians that torture in Nepal should be totally eliminated, totally prohibited, and we will pass that bill this year, I think. And next positive thing that is happening in Nepal, that we are totally changing our penal code and our code that deals with criminal investigation. And that bill is now being discussed in the parliament, and after some months, that bill will also be passed. That will change the scenario of investigation of any criminal case to a large extent. That is also going on in Nepal. And this is positive scenario that we can see in Nepal. But challenges are also very, very, very big in Nepal. One challenge is that, as Mahi has told, I agree, totally agree with him, that our political leadership is highly corrupt. Same old person, same family, for years, for decades, ruling for the decades, and no change at all. If we see the constitution, we can see that there is regime change. But despite of this regime change, there is no change in the attitude of the leadership and their tendency. Next challenge in Nepal is this class-based torture, which I have already mentioned. And third is social torture is also very much rampant in Nepal. Rape cases are increasing. This is very contradictory that police reform is also there. But rape case also increasing in a very rapid manner. Torture to the poor women and rape case in the custody in the village area is also happening. A new law has come against the torture in the name of witchery. Some poor woman, if the woman is poor, the villagers tell that this woman is witch, and they sometimes kill the woman or have some stool in her mouth, to make that woman, guilty of that being witch. This is happening in Nepal now and then. And this is a social kind of torture which is happening. New law has come against this recently. I think this will prohibit this kind of activity in the social level, but we are very much worried that this is happening in Nepal. And too much political intervention by the political leaders in the investigation happens in Nepal. Somebody, if the relative of the political leaders is in detention, from the CDO office to the custody, average 3 telephone calls from topmost political party leader to release him immediately, to release her immediately, if he or she is the relative of any political party leader. That happens in Nepal. And another challenge is torture acceptance culture among the people themselves. Nepali people almost think that if somebody is criminal, somebody is thief, this torture is natural, torture should be given. This kind of culture is among the Nepali people itself. And this culture is also encourages to have torture for an indefinite time. And another challenge is lack of proper training and equipment to the vast majority of police. Police wants to increase its capacity and equipment, and it is trying to change its attitude. But equipment given to the police is so less. As our officer from Kerala said, I agree with him that if good equipment, modern equipment is given to the police, police can be very much effective. That is seen in Nepal also, but that is not being done. And these are the basic challenges in Nepal for trial, free trial, and movement against torture. And now, what should be done? What should be the state priorities on that case? I want to speak a few things, and then I will finish. As I have already told before also, one of the root causes of ill treatment and torture in custody is outdated confession-based investigation. When confession is considered as evidence, then beating and torture can be natural. And this is happening in Nepal. Though in our law we cannot find that this kind of confession-based torture is legal. Legally, in law, this is not found, but this is as convention. It is going on as custom. So this should be changed. This should be changed. This should be replaced by the new investigation method. Whole police machinery should be trained newly, and it should be given scientific equipment and the necessary equipment that it needs for the modern scientific method. And next is, if we want to decrease and eliminate the torture and ill treatment, following 7 measures can be very effective in my view. One is modernization of the police, training even constable with modern investigation method, and making police well equipped with effective scientific tools. That is number 1. Good laws are necessary, making the torture as the criminal act in national laws, and provision of heavy punishment to the official responsible for the torture can be very much effective for doing so. Number 3 is making access to complaint easier and nearer. That means increasing the number of impartial and efficient local judiciary centers where victims of torture can go and easily complain and their complaint addressed properly. This is very much essential for stopping the torture. And 4th is opening the detention centers to the independent monitors. That may be effective, because if detention centers are open and transparent, then events of torture can be lessened, as we have seen the case of Kerala also. And next is video recording interrogations where possible. That can also be effective for stopping this. And effective civil society insight, effective press monitoring can be next measure for that. And 7th and last is cultural campaign to change the leaders' attitude. Our leaders' attitude should be changed, and our people's attitude also should be changed. Attitude towards torture should be changed. Torture is acceptable. This attitude should be changed. So for that, a kind of cultural campaign at the civil society level, at the debate, political debate level, is very much necessary in my view. So taken as a whole, Nepal is going forward, but there are many problems remain. We are very much hopeful that new constitution has come, and with this constitution, there will be political stability in Nepal, though some problems have remained. and we have to address that problem. That problem is problem of Madesi people and problem of Tharu people and indigenous people over there. That we can address their problems with the revision, with the amendment in the constitution. But presently, we are facing a torture from our neighborly country. We are always friendly, but as new constitution have come, Nepal is deciding very new thing. That is our internal matter. We can decide many things ourselves. We are efficient for that. But our Indian government has intervened in this, saying do this and do that, talk with this, change with this. They have given 7-point formula also to amend the constitution. This is not acceptable for us, and this is a kind of social torture we are facing over there. So I think we can change everything. We cannot change the neighbor. Therefore, we want we have very good relationship with the Indian people, but Indian government is not treating us as equal. Our country as sovereign country. This is the problem, and Indian friends are over here. We want to communicate through them to the government that we want very good relationship with Indian government. We don't want to ruin the relationship, but what we have to change, we will change ourselves. This much for today. But this discussion which I am seeing here is very much vibrant, and what Indian intellectuals over here, police officials over here are speaking, I think they will be very much enlightening. I would like to thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity given by Asian Human Rights Commission to me to speak before you. Thank you.